Not bad for a bunch of rusty metal. Still a little wet, so I can't open the door or anything. I need one more coat on the door. It's still a little bit striped. I probably should have filled those, but whatever. It's a bulldozer, who cares? Inside too. Should be tits when it's all done. Think hydraulic tank the same way. One little pinhole right there I should have filled with weld, but the finish isn't the best either. Whatever. Good enough. Cutting the piece out for the bushing support for the front of the dozer. This will be the blade pivot that lets it go like this. And be able to put some nice hardened steel bushings in it. I have a piece of 2-inch Monel left over from rudder build, so screw it. I'm going to use it and see how it wears. Should wear really good. It's got a really high wear ratio. Anyways, cut this off, and then I've got to slice those off. That's for the boat today. This will get, that's 3 1/4 outside, 2 1/4 inside. That'll get bored out to 2 3/8, just where the bushings ride. And then it gets welded into the front triangular pieces that come off of the blade support. And then the part that goes on the blade goes over the top of it. So the pin pivots inside this too. A little more later. Part of it for the rotation or tilt, yeah, I guess you'd call it tilt, on the 1010 John Deere dozer that I'm rebuilding, restoring, making way better. Anyways, so that's one part of it, and then the other part, that circular part, goes over here, and that's the other side of it. And that rides in the banana shaped track. And it just so happened that I had some spare bottom slides from rebuilding the bottom slides for the yokes on the front of the dozer for the chain tensioners, for the track tensioners. Anyways, these are from the parts dozer. And they were just a little bit more than I wanted to use, but once I cut into them, they more than I wanted to use for the actual yoke, but when I cut into them to get the shape in right for this, it got back into good material again, and they're freaking perfect. They'll let me put like 2 maybe 1/8 inch spacers under them, you know, as shims, so that you'll be able to tighten it down as it wears. But yeah, they work freaking perfect. I'm gonna drill them for 1 more in each, so there'll be 3 5/8 bolts on that, and or 6 5/8 bolts on that side and 6 5/8 bolts on that side, which will go like here, here, and here. Here, and here. Because I was going to weld it, but then I got thinking, if this ever needs to be serviced, which it will be, I would imagine it's going to need to be hard-faced eventually. I mean, this is just regular, well, it's a piece of C-channel structural steel that I chopped the middle out of, because I've got a bunch of it, and I need some thick plate, so... but yeah, this will probably end up getting hard-faced at one point or another, and then I'll chuck it back up in the lathe and face it back down to brand new again. But yeah, so I'm going to make these bolt on and off. But getting there, I've got a ton of parts cut and ready for this already. That all gets mounted. There's a bunch of them in there, 4 of them. 2 of them get welded to the U frame that attaches it to the dozer, the blade to the dozer, and then 2 of them get welded to the what is the bottom right now, backside of that, and then there'll be an ear on each side that the cylinder's attached to, and that'll give you your tilt this way. And then there'll also be a cylinder attached right here that'll have a total of 10 inches of throw, 5 either way, and that'll give you your tilt rotation. But yeah, anyways, shop's a freaking mess right now. Oh, and the box is all done. I don't know if I did a clip on this yet or not, but the box is done. I really wish I'd filled that pitting on the door in, but I don't know. Maybe I'll put a sticker over it. But yeah, it's ready to go in the machine. I chipped some of the paint like a dick bag, but yeah, everything works. The way it's supposed to. That's your float. And then that's the winch. Everything works good. These might let a little water in, but I don't know. Not enough to worry about, I think. But they're also not right. Oh, well, I guess that one's over the valve a little bit, but I just figured that this should have a boot and a kind of a gutter so that the water can't get in there as easy. It's not perfect. I had to rip it a little bit or cut it to get it over the T. I should have made that bolt on, but anyways, return's all done. I actually had to make that fitting because I didn't feel like waiting, but that's just a basically it's a straight nipple with a swivel that I cut the swivel off of, and then machined a piece of pipe with some nice grooves so that the clamp head and the hose had something to really good grab a hold of, and then that's got an actual pipe adapter in that one because it was straight and I had one. And then the filter, I do need a new filter. I haven't got it yet. This is a used housing. It's a good one, but then it goes down, over, and back up to the tank on the other side. These are going to be for the winch eventually, or grapple, maybe. I might build a grapple for it. That would be fun. And then the rest of the hoses all come out of the front. This bolts right to the fender. Armrest, nice spot. This should be a really sweet looking box once it's all done. I will probably put some foam or felt tape type stuff for sealer. Not that I'm not worried about it, but it'll keep it from rattling too. Maybe I'll do a graphic sticker on this, like a kind of up and then over and kind of break it out at that angle. That would look nice. And it would cover up the pitting. This side has the tread plate out. I figured screw it. It matches the dozer's mostly tread plate too. I should have put the tread plate out on all of it, but oh well. I did the top and the inside. Call it good. It was what I had. Good enough. This one's getting a little longer. Oh, maybe bring you back when I put that box on. Talk about just fitting. I had to use V-blocks to stand the clamps because it's so close to the edge. But golden. Had to swing her over, but be good. Oh, let's see. Spot drill everything. Then let's see. We'll drill them out. I'll probably tap them right in it. Yeah. Gotta tap them out to 5/8 and off to the races. Once I get those 4 drilled and tapped, or actually no, those don't get tapped. Those get tapped. I forgot, those are tapped. So I need to put those on it, tighten them up, drill through the center where I'm going to put the 3rd bolt in each one, take it back off, drill it to the size it needs to be on this, and then those will get clamped up in the vise, and I'll drill and tap that 2nd hole. I don't know, maybe I'll just tap it by hand. We'll see. Anyways, I'll bring you back a little bit. Oh, I just got done power tapping those. I just used a drill chuck on this because that's a big bit. So it's pretty hard to break a tap that big, especially a straight flute tap like that. So anyways, yep, drilled them, tapped them. I drilled them a little offset, tried to spread the bolt pattern out a little bit. Also, it just looks better to me that way, to have them kind of spread out, different areas. I don't know. I guess it's the woodworking side of me coming out. I'm used to doing that. Try not to line the grains up to split them. So, anyways, they're not perfect. I don't know. Eventually, I might build a little weld up right here. We'll see how it wears. But these, these were the original slides for the yokes on the parts dozer. So, still a lot of good meat there. And the taper matches the taper on the banana-shaped piece on the blade. So, yeah, anyways, I just popped this one loose. It's, worked pretty good. I just slowly kind of turn it on and off on the lowest speed. It's like 50 RPM or something. Anyways, yeah. There's those. Oh, so anyways, wipe that off real quick. And drop it on the floor. So those go like that. On here. Right there and right there. Kind of close. Anyways, like that. And they'll get a spacer plate behind them. They'll get some shims behind them to shim them to be just right. And, it should wear in a little bit fast in the beginning because not everything's perfect fit. But as soon as it wears in and the faces kind of start matching up, I'll be able to tell where I can add some weld and maybe subtract some weld or material. And that'll, when it wears in a little bit, then it'll get to a point where it slows right down because all the faces start to match up really good. This isn't 3D printed or anything. So it's not going to be perfect. I think I'm going to have to nip this corner off a little bit on this. Just cut like a triangle out and fold the end in and weld it back together because it looks like that is going to drop below the blade a little bit when it's all the way tilted to that side. I guess this way. But we'll see. I'm going to wait to mess with it until it's on it. And we'll see how far it rotates compared to the angle of the blade and stuff. Once I get to that point, if I gotta take it back apart real quick to slice that out, no big deal. But yeah, getting pretty close. Oh, get ready to weld them suckers on there. Alright, so these are ready to go on. Just to kind of test fit. That's how they came out. Chamfer. Got some bolts. They didn't have all the bolts that I needed, so I'm gonna reuse some that I cleaned up for right now, and then I will probably buy all the brand new ones. We'll see. Well, my hole alignment's good. That's what I like about drilling stuff right in place. Really, you ain't gotta worry about it. It's good. Those are the bolts for the other side. So there. Yeah. Obviously it needs to be tightened up, but I can also clean it up, add weld to it, whatever I need to. These are forged, so they weld pretty decent. They're either forged or cast steel. They seem like forgings. For such a simple part, I would imagine it probably was forged. And it's a high wear item, so yeah. Anyways, they fit good. I kind of hope I don't have to trim that off, because I think the cylinder mount needs to be as low as it possibly can. So yeah, I would rather leave that material there and be able to drop it down and not have to have such a high guard we're going to add to the blade. Right now it's just a square straight edge top blade, and for the 6-way, since the piston sticks up so much, we're going to have to come up with, you know, like triangles on each side and a square on the front, kind of like the newer dozers are. But yeah, getting there. Cool. Oh, we're doing some power tapping the cheapo way. I do have a tapping head, but it's not big enough to handle a 5/8, so here we go. Actually, make sure I'm lined up, and I'm not. Close enough for government work. And repeat. Forgot to move the clamp. Oh, let's see. That's it. I'm gonna have to totally move it. Which means another T-bolt or T-nut. And drove it too far. There's that. Shoot. Well, we're just gonna have to. Well, no, I can pull it in from that side. There we go. sauce. Tapped, baby. Blow them out. And let's try a bolt, you know. I gotta blow them out first. Feels good to me. Maybe I'll chamfer them a little bit. That just might be the bolt. Yeah, the bolt's a little funky on the end. I bet if I grab one of the used ones, I bet they go right in there. Yeah, that bolt's just got a little funny spot on the end. I'll have to clean up with a file. Yeah, because these ones going great, yeah. Cool. That means that part of it is done, and I can bolt it together and try it. Sweet. I will bring you guys back once I get it bolted onto the machine, well, the blade. I'll bolt it on the blade and we can try it out and see if it slides the way I think it's gonna. Just so you know, until my my new one shows up. I got another, see that no-go holder right there? I got it. That's one of the big boy no-go holders. I got one of those coming, and I'm gonna put a phone and iPhone mount on it. And then eventually I'll probably get a GoPro or something along the lines of that. But this works. I just clamp the phone in it at the angle I want and works pretty freaking good. Well, there's that. Bored them out to final size. Chamfered it. It's all prepped, ready for weld. You get a lot cleaner of a, you know, cleanup using this, even with the chatter. I don't really care about chatter. The weld's going to cover it up anyways, but you just get a lot cleaner of a setup and prep for welding, machining it instead of grinding it. And it's, you know, the shop doesn't smell like nasty, rusty metal. So I got to do the same thing to that one. And then that's the sleeve I made yesterday. That is set up for, that's like, it's just, just barely under 3 1/4 on the outside. It's like 240, which is exactly what I just bored that to, so that should slide right in. You know, it's slip fit so that I can weld it and have just a tiny bit of wiggle room, probably hardly any at all. I might even have to heat it up to get it to go, because I really did, they're both at 240, so but yeah, that gets a couple of hardened bushings and then the 2-inch pin. So there'll be a little bit of a thin bushing, but I'll just have to keep an eye on them. And I'm going to grease zerk this. I was kind of thinking about buying some seals for it too, but I don't know. It's, you know, it's a dozer. I feel like seals are just going to get shredded. So, but anyways, yeah, I'm probably going to chuck up the other one and bore it out, see how they fit. I still have to grind all the freaking paint off of it where I'm going to weld everything to it, and that's just going to be a pain in the ass. But anyways, and then these ones get bored for 2-inch, and then they get like a square thickening plate, so that, you know, just to beef it up. The pin doesn't move in that. I think I'm going to do a square thickening plate and then like a piece of 1/2 inch plate on top of the pin that's drilled in 3 or 4 places, and so it bolts the pin down. I mean, it's honestly, gravity would hold it no problem. It probably would never come out, but you know, might as well do it right. So it'll get drilled and tapped so that you can bolt the pin right to it, and then, you know, when I make the pin, I will make a piece for the outside that's bored out so I can weld it on the outside so it's a nice smooth fit. But yeah, looking pretty good. I'm probably gonna radius the corners of this just to kind of clean it up and make it look a little nicer. I was gonna chop it back, but I figure unless I have to for clearance, I might as well leave it for extra strength. Yeah. Oh yeah, and also, so this is the top one. That's the bottom one. The bottom one spreads across the whole thing. The U piece that you know, raises the blade up and down, just because it already had a crack and it's been fixed. So I figure, screw it, a few more pounds of steel. You know, it'll help the blade bite in when you're floating. But anyways, I set it up so this thickness is a 1/2 inch under what the frame width is there, where it's going to get welded to it. So you should be able to clean it up and put a nice fillet weld along the back. I'll weld it obviously underneath and on these sides, but it's set up so that when I put that sleeve in there and it's welded to the top and to the bottom, I'll be able to put some, like, it'll be right against it. So I might put like a nice root pass in there, and then a couple of pieces of like 1 inch by 1/2 inch plate that spreads, you know, between these, that ties that to it, just as added, you know, trying to make this as absolutely bulletproof as I can. Well, bring you back in a bit. Enough. Should be able to get a nice fat weld. Good root pass. Enough room for bushings. And the best part, the reason why I left it long so it pokes through, is so that I know that the bushing bore is in line the whole way. I think I'm probably going to push the bushings in and cap them before I weld it in, and that way, if the bore gets a little funky or anything from welding, which it shouldn't because it's really heavy wall mechanical pipe, but and the plates are 5/8, I have a better chance of keeping everything in line and true, so that I know that the pin will slide through. Well, I mean, I guess I could get out the line bore and stuff and the mag drill and line bore this when it was all finished if I had to, but I really don't want to. I've got a decent finish on everything. I think it'll be good. So, hopefully. I just got a bunch of cleanup grinding to do, kind of clean the edges up, radius them over. I decided I'm not going to trim anything off. I'm just going to kind of round the edges, and I got to clean up a bunch of rust off of it and stuff. It's not too bad. It's really just surface rust, but and then on the piece from the dozer, I've got to clean all the paint off of that. But yeah, the big one's the bottom, the small one's the top. You'll realize why when I get it on there, and you can see somebody added some corner plates and some stiffening stuff to it that made it so that this pretty much had to be like this. If they hadn't done that, I would have made them both the size of the bigger bottom one so that it spread the whole thing, but this will be good. It'll be plenty strong. There's a lot of material there. Some of that is going to be over 1.5 inches of steel between the 3 layers that are there, so it'll be plenty strong to do whatever we need to do. Yeah. Yeah, should be good. Well, that's what I got done today. A bunch of spatter to clean up on it, but looks pretty good, I think. I got one funny spot right there, but I think it's just a slag inclusion. I'll clean it up with the die grinder and put a little dot on there with the TIG welder just to fill it in, but yeah. Not bad. You gotta weld along that bottom seam. I need to put I already did the root pass on the back, but now I need to clean it up with the grinder and put a couple of big thick filler passes on top, which means I need to pick it up like that so I get a nice smooth weld in there. I figure screw it, if I've got it off and I can move it around, I might as well move it into the position where it welds the best and easiest. So that's what I'm gonna do, and then it needs to be stood up the other way so I can weld down in there all the way across underneath, and then it needs to be flipped so I can do basically everything I just did but on the bottom side of all of it. Then clean it up with the flap wheel, kind of round the corners. I need to mic the bore again in there to make sure that it's still round and good, and if it isn't, then I need to rebore it just to make sure everything's lined up again and true. I suppose it's not too big. I probably could just pick it up with the crane and swing it over and put it in the mill and just hold it with the crane same way I did the boat trailer, but I don't know, we'll see. I'm hoping that they didn't come out around too awful much. If they're still round but undersized, I'll just cut some bushings that are undersized a little bit more than what I would have normally, and I'll throw them in. It's, you know, it's a one-off. It doesn't need to be to spec or anything like that. I bored that to 2 inches deep, 2 3/8 wide, which left me with about a 7/16 wall thickness all the way around, and yeah, or a 3/8 wall thickness all the way around, sorry. But anyways, getting there. I'll have this blade on there soon enough. Then it's time to do a bunch of hydraulics, a bunch more hydraulics.
Well, there she is.
The bushings pressed in. I grooved them and spiral cut them. Get the grease out where it needs to be. I'm going to gun drill the pin and pop it in the middle of each bushing, chamfer the holes so that it'll be easy to grease. There'll be one grease zerk. Well, this is the bottom, so it'll be on top in the middle of the pin. Probably weld a piece of pipe around it, keep it from getting beat up. I might even put a piece of, yeah, I will. I'll put a piece of pipe that's threaded, and that way I can put an NPT cap on it with a, you know, so that it's totally protected. So I'll be able to take the piece off and grease it and put it back on. Won't have to worry about dirt and all that crap. But I was thinking about capping these holes, try to stiffen it up, but it doesn't really need it. It's good. Not my best welds, but it's hard to weld in a circle with an arc welder. But they were chamfered, so there's a big, thick root pass, and then, you know, a nice fat wash bead on top to kind of tie it together. Everything is fully welded all the way around. Welded, welded, welded. The welds really look like crap because I beat on them with the air hammer. I need to get a new needle scaler. Needle scaler works a lot better and does a lot less damage to the weld, as you can see. I mean, the welds, they're not beautiful, but they really look like crap once they get all beat up with the air hammer. Not that it matters. A little bit of undercut on that. Not bad, though. Yeah. I still need to press the bushing in on the bottom. I got the top one in, and I made the cardinal rule mistake of not oversizing the bore because it's a press fit bushing, and I might have gone a little heavy. I went 4 thousandths on the press fit, Probably should have done 2, but I wanted them to really be in there because this takes such a beating. I didn't want them to get, loosened up. So that means now I need to chuck it up in the milling machine again, which is going to be a pain in the butt, but I should be able to do it easy enough. And bore it back to 2-inch 1 thou so that it's got a thou clearance for that pin. And yeah, this part will be done once the bushing, the other one's pressed in. I'm going to take the other bushing, chuck it back up in the lathe, center it, and cut probably 3 thou off of it at least. So that when I press that one in, I won't have to line bore that side. I'll be able to just bore this side and good to go. And then those triangles need to be cut off and flipped. I'm going to put this one on that side and that one on this side, and that way the straight up and down, which is the back right now, doesn't look like it because the angle that it's at, but that is straight up and down. That'll be facing forward, and it'll be right about here. So the pinholes are in the same spot. The triangle faces backwards, and that'll give me enough room right here to put a piston on each side to run this back and forth. And then those get welded back on. I need to put some track pad guides on the side somewhere to keep it perfectly centered, because I want to use 3-inch pistons, and with 3-inch pistons there's only like a 1/2-inch clearance on each side. So I don't know, I might have to downgrade to 2.5-inch pistons, which sucks because that means I would have to either buy them or make them. Don't really want to do that. I would rather use the pistons that I have, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Then I need to chop out right here just a little bit so that the rod from the piston, which will be coming from this side, will have clearance, and then I'm going to take that piece and weld it on the other side to fill in the hole from where it was before. And it should look factory because these are 2 stamped pieces, and then there's a seam weld. So that seam weld will match up with the seam weld on the backside. So it'll look, if I clean it up, it should look pretty factory. From the research that I've done, it looks like that's how they did the 6-way blades right from the factory anyways. They used the same U-frame. Those were flipped. And then it looks to me like they used the same pistons that I'm using, which are the leftover pistons from the blade up and down from the parts machine, which they're okay. They're a little pitted on the, not pitted, but rusty on the shaft, so I might make some new shafts for them, or rods. Oh, excuse me. Hiccups. But like I said, we'll see when we get there. If I can't use those, then I'm gonna have to figure something else out. I don't really want to go below, like, geez, I don't even want to use a 2-inch piston because I don't think it'll have enough pressure to do what I want to do. It's nice to be able to pop stumps out and stuff with the corner of the blade. That's the main reason that I'm putting a 6-way blade on it. But yeah, there's some substantial meat here. This is like 1.5 inches thick now because it was reinforced after someone cracked it, and then they put this bottom cap on, this plate on, and then another plate under here. So there's the original square tube, which is 1/2 inch like this. Then there's a piece of 3/4 on top, 3/4 gusset. Then there's the 5/8 or 11/16 pieces that I put on. So there's a substantial amount of steel there. But yeah, a little bit of paint and some boring, and I should be able to flip it over, take it outside, and slice those right on the weld with the plasma cutter, clean them up, flip them around, weld them back on, make sure they're all straight and true. Yeah. Well, there's those made. That one's a doubler. And that one is for putting the pin through, and from what I've seen on most excavators, that is never the same size as the pin. It's always bigger by a little bit. Don't know why, but I figure screw it. I'll copy what the big manufacturers do. They know more about it than I do. So yeah, clean those up, get them ready to weld on. Well, I gotta drill that one first, and also the pin. I'm gonna space the pin in there to be like exactly the same, you know, like I'll space it in 4 spots around so it's centered in the bore of that. And then I'll drill them both probably at the same time. Yeah, or I'll probably drill through that piece and then put the shaft in it and spot drill that on one side, and that way I'll know where to drill it and everything will be right. Anyways, then that gets welded on. Yeah, I had to fill in a piece. This was a piece of used plate and it had a chunk cut out of it there, so I V'd it out and made a little piece to go in there and cleaned it up, and then welded or machined the edges on both of them while they were stacked, and then drilled them while they were stacked, so everything's identical. So when I weld this and this to the piece of 10-inch C-channel out there, that is the piece that goes on the back of the blade that lets it do this, those get welded to it, and everything will be nice and true and flat and plumb and square and all those good words that mean that it's right. Anyways, yeah, I gotta go to the dump. All my trash cans are full, I think. But yeah, so coming along. Just got done drilling it out. Cross drill, now it needs to be chucked back up in the lathe. I'll probably face it both sides, and then it gets a groove cut that is about 1/2 inch wide all the way around to do like it's like a flat snap ring basically that goes over it that holds the pin in place so it can't come out. It's what John Deere uses on all their stuff, so, or used to. Anyways, and I got these plates all finished. They are all weld prepped. Oop, I shouldn't do that. Anyways, they're all weld prepped, and I ended up running the... I have a shitty carbide end mill. It's all chipped up, but works good for cutting off slag and like plasma cutting swarf and stuff. So I went and cleaned them all up on all edges. So I mean, it'll make it go together so much better and true and smooth and all that. So and then I cleaned them up with the grinder and got ready. That collar that I'm working on in the mill goes right there. This is the bottom side of the bottom one, and this is the top side of the top one. So the pin will go through there on the top. And I was going to put a cap on the pin so it couldn't fall out even if the pin fell out, but if I do that, there's a possibility that it makes it really hard to get the pin extracted because you basically have to pull it out. If I leave it a smooth pin and it can come out either way, it's just, I feel like it's just a better way to do it. I might end up putting, like, drilling and tapping 4 holes in the bottom and making a little cover plate that goes on it so that it can't fall out until you're ready to take it out. But that, you know, it'll still, you'll be able to unbolt that cap, and it gives you the option to drive it out the bottom or pull it out the top if you needed to. But anyways, those are done. Once I get that other piece done, I'll tack that square and the circle onto those in the right orientation. I want the pin going like this, so it's easy to drive out. And then I gotta bring the piece of C-channel that's on the blade in here, clean some rust up off of that where these are gonna mount, and then I can clamp it all together at the right width and tack it and take it back apart and weld it all together. Should be great. After that, I should be able to slam it together to a certain extent and see how everything is going to work. I don't want to mount it to the tractor yet until I get the hydraulic pistons on it, but I need to get it all together to measure for the pistons for how much throw they are. I think it needs about 20 inches of throw on the pistons that make it do this, and then it needs 10 inches of throw for the piston that makes it do that, I think. We'll see once I get it together. That's what I'm talking about. Probably should have made it a little thinner, but the only pipe I had that was close was aluminum, so screw it. I used aluminum and made it a little thicker. But it should be fine. It's on there good. It just barely rotates. Oh, should be able to take it off. Pretty easy, but it's a deep enough lip where it wants to stay. So cool. Well, there's the setup for that. Well, pre-test setup, I guess. Marking everything where I need to clean it up. Grind the rust off of it. It just so happens that a couple of parallels that I have that are ground to the same size are the exact width that needs to be. I was going to make it 8 inches, but that would be like a quarter inch too much in shims, or more than I'd want to, so it's actually perfect. They're just under 7 7/8, I think. I don't know. That's what they measure out to be, so. The pin boss and bushings and stuff on the dozer part are 7 3/4, so that'll give me an 1/8 inch shim to make up in between there. I'll probably just do just a solid 1/8 inch one on the top, and well, I don't know, maybe I'll do the 1/8 inch one on the bottom, and that way if it wears out I can put a new one in easy enough. I don't know, we'll see. I'm gonna make the pin so it can drop out both ways, so there'll be a cross pin right there. I'm gonna chop the top off of that. That was so I could drive bushings in with it, but that needs to be machined off and through drilled. And then on this end, I'm gonna make a cap with 2 bolts so that you can drive it out from either way, and it'll be retained, like double retained. So if the pin ever failed or something, the pin can't just fall. If the little pin failed, the big pin can't just fall out. Have a cap on the bottom. The other thing I gotta do is I need to cut out this notch back there, and then I need to bend from right there, right here. That needs to be bent 3/4 of an inch that way, so that I'll have enough room to weld and all that good stuff. Yeah, this is for clearance, so that when the blade is all the way that way, it doesn't drive this into the ground and cut a trench. And I'll get the most amount of, that'll give me 2 more inches of angle. But yeah, and then I think I'm gonna plate right across this, across here, down in, and across there, all to kind of box that in. That should make it wicked stiff. Other than that, it needs to come back apart, be ground, put back together, tacked. I'll probably throw some big clamps on it once it's tacked, so it really holds its positioning. I don't think I'm going to weld it with the pin in it. I've had bad luck with that in years past, a couple of times. I would rather not score the pin and beat the pin all up if by chance something comes out of alignment. I would rather not be able to put the pin back in and have to, put a die grinder in there or run the ream through it or something again to get it lined back up true. But usually if I tack it all in really good with the pin in and then take the pin out and then fully weld it, usually it's really close. These have about a thou on that pin of movement, so that should be enough to drive her home when it's time. But, well, there she is, all welded up. I put a little too much heat on that front edge, and it lifted it up about a 1/4 inch. So tomorrow afternoon, after I get done working on the boat, I'm probably going to slam it into the wood splitter and see if that's got enough to bend it back. It's a 25-ton wood splitter, so we'll see. I need to get myself a press, build a press. That might be a future project coming up that we make some videos on. But so she's got quite a bit of angle. Should be good, and it should have plenty of clearance for the tracks, because the farthest forward the tracks are is right there where the scars are. So should have, it'll probably be like 5 or 6 inches between the tracks and the tip of the blade. I did end up cutting it, and I cut a wedge out of it and folded it up and welded it back, V'd everything out or whatever. But yeah, all in all, it stayed really straight while I was welding it, besides that one spot that lifted that way, but that's easy enough to fix. Even if on the inside of that I have to put a big fat bead to pull it back down, that's doable. It's raining now. Get back inside. But yeah, it seems to be good. Oh yeah, where I folded that edge up, right there where I folded that up, I also had to fold up the mount a little bit, and I kind of wish I hadn't. I kind of wish I had just let it taper into it, because now it's coming in contact with that. So I think I'm gonna have to kind of scallop that out a little bit, and I might try to heat that and bend that lip down just a little bit. It's so minor. It's like, it's stopping me from having like an inch of travel this way, so not a big deal. I can definitely figure something out to remedy that. But yeah, hopefully the wood splitter's got enough pickle. If not, nobody else on the island has a press big enough, so I'd have to probably take it to the mainland to get it straightened out, which is doable. That's not a big deal. I could use a bunch of bottles to be filled for torch gas and welding gas, so I might go over anyways and have them do it if I can't get it to straighten it out. But pretty psyched. Everything turned out pretty much the way I want. The mounts for the pistons are going to be right there, right on top on the corners, because the pistons will travel right there. Yeah. Hopefully it all works the way I want it to. I'm going to put a grease zerk. I was going to gun drill the bore of that pin so I could have one grease zerk in top, but I think it's safer to put it down in there. I'll drill through and tap it and have a grease zerk in the middle there, and it'll just fill the cavity with grease. There's really not much room in there anyways. Each bushing was 2.5 by 2 with a 2-inch bore. 2.5 inch OD, 2-inch height, 2-inch bore. So that is a 7.5 inch piece. So I mean, there's only a couple 3 inches in between them of bore that is 2 1/4 instead of 2. So I mean, it's 1/8 inch on each side. There's really not that much room to put grease in there, so it should be easy enough to deal with. But yeah, getting there. Now that I know what I'm going to need for throw, I can figure out if I'm going to have to flip these or not. On the 6-way blade dozers, they come factory with those triangles the opposite way around, so that corner is just about touching down there, which gives you enough room to put the pistons in there. But with my setup, I'm not sure if I'm going to need to. I might be able to get enough throw out of them without doing that. Just in this amount of room right here. That'd be great, but we'll see. Bring you back now.
Oh. There's that. Started overheating the torch on my TIG, so
gotta let it cool off. I got a big 18 size WP18 torch that I'm gonna put on it. Because, I mean, that's a 300 amp machine. That thing will put out some serious heat. AC and DC. I got it because I weld aluminum with it a lot, and it's freaking awesome. The only thing I don't like is it does it's a little jumpy on the start sometimes. Like it goes bzz, 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 instead of just a nice even arc right off the light, but it doesn't always do it. So it might need the contacts to be cleaned and adjusted inside, or I don't know. Maybe it's just the way it is, but anyways, I used the TIG because it's cold out and I haven't finished building my suction rig yet. And arc welding and MIG just makes so much smoke that it'll smoke me out. So I decided to do the root pass with TIG just so you can probably hear the wood splitter running. I'm going to use the wood splitter to try to straighten out that one a little bit. It's only out by like 3/16 of an inch, so it's not too bad. I should be able to fold it in. But I wanted to get this at least tacked together right here before I went pushing on it, because this one is perfect. This side is really straight and true, and the other side's really close. So I think that it'll be easy enough to straighten out, and then the pin will slide all the way through. And I can see what I need to clearance on that, where I had to, see if you can see that, where I had to toe that up a little bit right here. I'm going to grind some of it down. You can probably just see that mark. I'm going to take some of it off so that it doesn't interfere. Take a little bit off of the frame too. But yeah, I'll bring you back in a bit. Just got done welding the end fitting on. It's just I had a, just by chance, stainless 3/8, what do they call them? It's a split coupling, I think is what they call them. No. It's what puts two pieces of pipe together so you can break it down if you need to. But anyways, I had one of those that was 3/8, so I machined the threads off of it, and it's going to be the new hose inlet on the end. I had to cut these were 16 inch. I had to cut like 11 inches off of them. These are the original pistons from the parts dozer, and for the lift, for the blade lift, and now they're going to be for the rotation this way on the 6-way blade conversion we're doing. So yeah, 3/8 end cap. It's 3/8 thick. Did a root pass with the TIG, and then I usually would just do the root pass and then do the stick on top or MIG, so that you don't get crap down in the piston when you're welding the end cap on. I always do the root pass with TIG, but it was welding so nice that I just went right back around it again with a cap pass, and I think it looks great. So and then these, yeah, that's how much I had to cut off of them. Or maybe it was 9 inches. I can't remember. Anyways, I needed 9 inches of travel, so that's the other one I still gotta do. But and then I made these this morning. I just bored out 1 1/4 inch, quarter wall, 3.5 inches long. The reason why I'm using these instead of the factory ones is, well, the factory ones were a little on the wobbed out side. I mean, they could have been bushed or whatever, but these, how do I put this? They get it as close as possible to the end of the piston so that you have the most amount of room length while you get the least amount of barrel possible. because I'm kind of limited on space with the triangles that come up off of that frame for the up and down pistons, which I'm probably going to have to flip around. The factory 6-way blade uses the same frame basically, but the triangles on each side, that hold it in place, like that the piston's attached to, are flipped around the other way so that the angular part of it goes back and it's straight up and down on the front. Right now it's the other way around. I'm not sure why they did it like that on the straight blade version, but anyways, I'm gonna turn it around and weld them back on, and it'll give me all the room I need for the pistons. And I gotta cut some slots in it for the hoses to run through. Just that's the way they do it on the 6-way blades from the factory, so I figure screw it, I'll do the same thing. But yeah, anyways, this is wrapping up, and it sounds like somebody just pulled up, so I'll end this right now. Oop. Well, there's that one all done. Oop. Some funny coloring on the heat pattern. Well, I think that'll be fine as kind. Most of the hard pressure on this is pushing back that way anyways. But that will give me enough room for a 1/2 inch right here of plate. It'll be a 1/2 inch thick, probably 3 inches wide or so. But from the edge of the hole to here is like 5/8 or something, so I should be able to put a piece of the end of the eyelet should be a 1/2 inch thick, which is more than strong enough. So yeah, do up the other one, and then I gotta cut on the U frame, the blade lifting frame. So distorted welded on, so should be good. Like 10 thou maybe that squeezed in on one side from the weld. No big deal. Clean them up. Makes them wear better anyways when they perfectly weld. So warm up into the corner, and then I gotta weld the ends on with the thin end for the draw. Clean up some paint. Oh, let's see. I sliced them off with the Evolution skill saw and cleaned them up. I cut them a little high because I wanted to get it nice and straight, and then I plasma gouged the weld, what was left, on the arms themselves. It's not perfectly beautiful, but it doesn't really matter. Cleaned it up with the grinder, got it nice and square, trued up the uprights. Before I even did all this, I took a bunch of measurements and made a bunch of marks on it, so I knew what was plumb and square and true. And because even the front, this edge right here on both of them isn't plumb, it's angled a little bit. So I did a plumb line and basically just flipped them, put the one from one side on the other side backwards. The guides are still on there. I'm just gonna have to add a little bit. There's about, well, there they are on the floor. That's how much. I might even just put those back on. I think I'm gonna have to put a little bit wider guides on it, just because the pistons are a little wider than the actual width of this, and obviously I don't want them to chafe. I was looking at a 450C today. Actually, it's the guys that gave me the parts dozer, Hopkins Boatyard, and I was looking at their 450C, and same thing. Their pistons are a little bit wider than it, and the tracks have eaten right into the sides of the pistons. So I'm going to put a little bit wider guides on probably both sides. I would rather have it rub a little bit on the tracks and wear the tracks a little bit than chew into the pistons and just have replaceable wear plates on the sides. So that's probably what I'm going to do inside and out. There won't be much of it anyways, if any, that can hit the tracks. I guess it depends on where the tracks are tensioned. Let me grab one of these. Put this here. You'll be able to see what I'm talking about. Oh, that is centered, and that is pretty well right where it's gonna be. So, yeah, I don't even think it's gonna come in contact with it. They're probably gonna be about an inch farther back than where I just set it, and the closest the track ever came to it was there, and that was with worn out track guides and shoes and stuff. So now that that's all replaced, you know, and I've got good new sprockets on it, that should pull it back a little bit, at least for a while. But I'm still going to put some guides on it, and I'll probably incorporate in the mount for the piston for that back, you know, right there. For that back mount, I'll probably incorporate some slides on that to make the mount just a little wider than, because I'm going to box it in and shit, but make it a little bit wider than what the piston is, just a little bit. Like, I mean, even 1/8 of an inch will do it, 16th or quarter, I mean. So if it ever does come close to it, it'll hit that before it hits the piston. You know, maybe just like a piece that runs from, you know, here, back here, forward on the side right there, instead of up and down. I mean, originally there was no outside guides, and it chews into the side rails, so I'll do something about that. I was thinking just, you know, some, whatever I can fit. I got to get the frame back on there and take some measurements. I mean, I have the measurements, but it's always good to have it fit and on it in case something's tweaked one way or the other, so that I know, you know, if something's tweaked a little bit, I can kind of wiggle some stuff around to get it right. I was thinking, those back bushings aren't in too bad a shape, but if I ever needed to, you could do eccentric bushings and put like a way to key them so that you can spin them to get it lined up, and then you could like screw them in place so that they won't move, and that would, you know, it would give you some alignment on the frame. But should be able to get it really close with just the way it is. I rebored the arms that hold the back of that and everything. So, but anyways, I think what I'm gonna do is a thick spacer under it that gets welded to the top of that. That's drilled for the 1.25" pin, and I don't know, I was kind of hoping to avoid drilling into this, so actually that's a little thicker. It's probably going to be a 3/4 inch thick by 1.25" by, you know, maybe like 3 inch, whatever the width of that is, spacer. I'll weld that in. That'll be the bottom pin mount, and then the top, I'm probably going to box it in right from here back to that, just to beef it up a little bit, because I do realize that flipping these puts more stress on this up front, but dude, that's all 1/2 inch. It's 1/2 inch angle that's been welded into box, so it's super strong stuff. You know, and torsionally it's really strong too, because it's had so much added to it. It's had those corner gussets, it's had bottom corner gussets. There is 2 inches of solid steel if you add up all the plates along the bottom, and 1.5 inches along the top right here, tying this all together. So it's this thing, I gotta weigh it when it's done. It's crazy heavy, but you know, it'll be good for back dragging. You'll be able to really bury the blade, which is good. And I think I figured out how I'm gonna do the rotation for the circle and the banana shaped thing for the blade to do this movement. think I'm going to go from the top of this side up with an arm, and it's going to go across to the blade, which should it should work good. I was just going to go straight up and down, basically where that board is right there with a piston, but you don't get enough room, and there's clearance issues, and so I think I'm going to go the other way, sideways, and then we're going to build up the top of the blade with a triangle, a square, and a triangle, like the newer ones are, which gives you more capacity and protects everything in the back. But yeah, that's where I'm at. Get some stuff welded up tonight. And
just getting ready to mount the cylinders to it. That's pretty much where they're gonna sit. Gotta do a couple cuts on the end of the rod eyes, but just to kind of clean them up, round them over. That's how much the cylinder is gonna move in when it turns, and then when it turns all the way the other way, they don't go any farther than just inside the outside edge. So they're basically flush with that, but in just a tiny bit, and then I'm going to put a chafing plate on the side of that because obviously it's less wobbed out than it used to be, because I've done a bunch of pin stuff with it, cleaned a bunch of stuff up, but you can kind of see it there. It's been chafing into the side right there, so I'm going to put a chafing plate on it, and then I'm going to put a bigger plate. There's little ones in there, but I'm going to put a thicker one in, just to try to keep it as centered as I possibly can. But that's how much throw that way it's going to have, and same the other way. There's going to be a piece of flat bar, 3-inch, that goes up, over, and down on each one that the pin goes through. And then under it there'll be a piece of 1-inch, 1.25 inch inside diameter, 1 inch tall, to space that up where it needs to be. And also that'll be the bottom pin boss. And then on the top there'll be another piece of that tubing, right there that the ends are made out of. Ends up being quarter wall, sticking off the top of the mount and off the top of the back mount, and that's what the pins will go through, just like that. That's not how that's gonna be. I was just checking spacing. So that is the bottom side to this one, so that's the bottom pin boss that gets welded on. And then there's a piece of 1/2-inch flat bar that goes from here out, and that is the top pin boss. And then it gets plated with 1/4 inch on each side. It should be more than strong enough. Box it in, and I'll probably cut the corners out of it so that it can drain. And then the 4 hoses come through this. I'm gonna cut those out, and then those I started. I haven't even come close to finishing. I got interrupted and had to do something else, but there'll be another, those are just some pieces I had kicking around. There'll be another 1.25 inch hole down a little ways on each one, and then I'll chop them off, and then it'll get cut out in between them, so that it's a reinforcing ring basically to go around that where the hoses go out, to get the strength back into it. Probably doesn't need it, but I might as well. But yeah, the 4 hoses come through that. 2 of them go to this cylinder, and there'll be a T and a T, and then they go over around the front to the other cylinder, and then the other 2 hoses that come out will come over and up to the cylinder that's going to be right here for the rotation that way. But getting there, little bit at a time. A lot of machined parts, because I'm trying to get all the pin bosses back to really good condition so that it's tight. Figure if I'm going to do it, I might as well do it right. Yeah.
I'm going to put some adjustable stops on it so that right now, end of travel both directions is maxed out on the pistons both directions, which is perfect, but I also don't want to put all that stress on the pistons if you're jacked all the way over and say you run into something. So I'm going to get some 1-inch threaded rod and put a piece of threaded rod and a metal stop for it to go against that you can adjust, so that, or it might just be a bolt, but so you'll be able to adjust it, and right when it gets to the end of the travel on the piston will be right when it touches the stops on each side, and that way it's not just putting all the stress on the pistons and the mounts and stuff, it's transferring it into the frame too. But anyways, it is all tack welded together. Just gotta like burn it all in with the arc welder. There, got the outsides and the tops of the front pivots done, and that's all the root passes and like heavy tacks are done with the TIG. So it's a 300 amp TIG. It heats up that 1/2 inch like nothing. Oh, maybe 3/4 pinned on the pedal. So I did do final passes on that in there because I can't get to it once that's all on very easily. I mean, I guess I can, but it's not. It was easier just to weld it there. So those are both kind of a crappy lighting, but those are both, you know, root pass and then a big fat pass on top. So, and this is all ready to go at it with the arc welder. So yeah, I might fill in that little hole right there too. This was a used piece of C-channel right next to a bolt hole, imagine that. But I can clean that up with the die grinder and backfill it with the TIG, and you'll never even know. So anyways, it works the way I want it to. I'm pretty psyched. Just got to do a bunch of arc welding. I think I'm going to lay another bead, wire wheel that, and lay another, maybe 2 beads in. I was trying not to distort it. I mean, that's a pretty fat weld. Anyways, it's ugly, but I was jittery that day, I guess, for some reason. Couldn't lay a decent weld. I mean, it's not like I can't lay a good weld. You know, showing off my welds, worst thing you can do on YouTube. But that's not bad. A couple of dents from the hammer, but you know, it's not like I can't lay a good weld. Root pass. It's TIG. Focus. Anyways, bunch of arc welding tonight. All ground up. Probably gonna fill that spot just a little more with the TIG just to clean it up. I was trying to be careful to not totally collapse that hole, so I'll do it with the TIG. But pretty much cleaned up. I gotta go in there with the die grinder just because it's bugs the shit out of me that there's all those BBs in there. They're not really hurting anything, but I think they'll make it rust. You know, paint doesn't like getting in around them, so clean them up. That one and that one, and then one of the last things I forgot to do is I want to do the same thing I did here
This whole piece kind of had to be this way a little bit to catch the hole patterns that it needed to. It's pretty much as short as it can be, but it needed to be this way a little bit. So the center line is this way if you measure it. So I had enough room on this side to triangulate it and, you know, whatever. Probably didn't need it, but I'd rather overbuild it than underbuild it. And then this side, it had to be flush. Originally, I was going to have a piston right here for the rotation, but decided against that, and now I think I'm going to have one across the top, like the 450Cs. So, I mean, I could have gone farther out with it and done the same thing, but now I'm going to put a piece in right here to triangulate that one a little bit. I might just TIG that in. 300 amp TIG should do it fine. I could have done the whole thing with TIG, but it was used metal, so I'd rather arc weld it, and I'm more than proficient at arc welding. I wasn't worried about the BBs. I could have left this all just the way it was, and you know, they were actually really pretty welds. But anyways, yeah, it's pretty much all finished ground. A little bit of cleaning to do, but not much. I got it cleaned up pretty good. I am gonna, since I had to chop this out on this, you know, on that side for the piston to clear, I'm gonna come in here and probably put a piece of 3/8 or, yeah, probably 3/8 or maybe ½ inch. I think I have some 1.5 inch left over from doing the track adjuster slides on the front of it, so probably take a piece and bend it. It's gonna, I know it looks funny right now because that's just the shape, that's how it was, but I'm gonna come up and then do a nice radius bend, and I'll fill that in with weld right there a little bit so that it's a nice smooth arc the whole way. You know, I can't go in any closer than that anyways because the end of the piston is big enough. So I'm gonna put the end of the piston in there with a couple of shims, and then I'll probably, you know, weld the bottom of it on and get it nice and red and bend it around the piston with some shims in there, and then weld it in place. Take the piston back out, finish weld it. But that's like the last of the welding on this. Oh well, no, I don't think these guides are going to be in the right spot. They used to be here, but I left them. So if they need to be, I don't know, the thing that they slide on is like 10 inches long. So if they still catch where they're supposed to, you know, slide where they're supposed to, awesome. If not, I'll add another strip in or something. But I think they're going to make it. I think they'll be all right. But anyways, it's coming along nicely. That's all welded in. I did weld in there, you just can't see it. It's, you know, close clearance. The pin, there's nothing there, just the pin stops. I think I'm actually gonna drill and tap and put a little tie bar across it so that if the top pin that goes through here ever fails, that it can't just drop out. But I do want to be able to drive the pin out either way, whatever's easiest. Probably driving it in from that end, and then if it ever needs to be changed or new bushings put in, being able to drop it right down through by taking that plate out. So, but anyways, it's looking good. I think it's pretty close to being able to go on the machine and you know, paint and blah blah blah. I still have to chop out that and then the same thing on the front, and then reinforce it for where the hoses go. So that's the other welding thing that I got to do on it still. But yeah, a lot of welding this weekend, nights and yada yada. But I'm gonna go home and get some dinner. Over and out. Got everything finished welded yesterday. Forgot I had to do the tops of these. Those are done. Those are done. That's been done. that's all done. Added that last little bit right there, that little gusset, just because probably didn't need either of those gussets, but you know what? Fuck it. Overbuild it, don't break it. So anyways, that's all done. I had some thoughts of possibly chucking it up in the mill and taking a thin cut off of each face just to make sure that they're still on the same plane, because it definitely got a little banana shape to it. It's not bad, but a little bit. I don't know. I'm gonna put it on the machine and see how everything fits, make sure that that stuff still lines up where it's supposed to. And, you know, if it's gotta come back off and go in the mill, then so be it. Not a big deal. Right now, however, I am drilling. I guess it could be considered gun drilling, but usually gun drilling means you're drilling down the middle. So I am drilling the top down through past so that it's off to the side of the roll pin that goes through there to hold it in place. That is going to be for a grease zerk. Goes down 3.5 inches. Then it'll be drilled in from the side. Put it in the lathe. I'll cut one little groove around it, and I might use the grinder to cut like a couple of just barely spirals off of it, not even 90 degrees around, just a little bit to get it to come out. But honestly, just the groove around it should be more than enough to spread the grease out, and you know, is what it is. But I gotta do that one and then that one, and then I gotta pull those two pins. No big deal, they're just sitting in there. But and do the same thing. Those ones obviously only have to get drilled in a couple inches, so that's not a big deal. But this is a little nerve-wracking because that is a very tiny bit. I want to say it was 100 thou. I can't remember. It's right around that 100 thou. I don't know where my calipers are. They're on the lathe, whatever. So yeah. Anyways, I got it drilled all the way in so far. It's all the way down. I don't want to push it in there because it's probably a chip in the wall. But anyways, that's 3.5 inches down. Then it gets drilled that size. So I start with the short bit just to save wear on my long bits. But yeah, start with the short bit, go all the way in, finish it up with that. This is actually oversized from this bit, just a little bit. A couple, I think it was like 10 thou bigger. This bit's 10 thou bigger than that bit. So, you know, that way a little bit of clearance just for chips and oil and shit. But plenty of oil doing this kind of stuff, man. You gotta lots of oil and clear it. Just drill a tiny bit, pull it out, clear the chips, put a drop of oil in it. Same thing over and over and over again. That way you don't get a chip bind and break a freaking bit off and ruin the pins. Even though those pins are pretty much ruined anyways. They're cut-offs from the cylinders, and that was the part of the cylinder that was sticking out, so it's got some rust pitting on it, but it's really not that bad, and honestly, I don't care. It is what it is. I thought I had some more of that, which is 1/4 inch Monel, marine shafting, or 1 1/4 inches, but I don't, so I'm using this, and those, and gotta do the same thing, so. Where was I? Oh yeah, so drilling with that all the way 3.5 inches in. Then it gets drilled in about, I'll probably have to go in, well, let's see, it needs to be threaded in 1/4 inch for the grease zerk, so I'll probably drill in 3/4 of an inch just to make sure that I've got enough clearance and, whatever for the end of the tap. But yeah, then it gets tapped and tiny little grease zerks. Yeah. I might end up putting a shield over it. I haven't decided yet. To try to keep the grease zerks from getting smashed off. We'll see how it goes. If they get smashed, then I'll figure something out, like maybe a piece of pipe or something. But yeah. Also, it's only quarter 28 threads. It's fine thread for grease zerks, but having that drilled and tapped lets you, if you need to, pull the grease arc out, put a 1/4-inch bolt in it, and use it to pull the pin out too if you need to. But these pins are pretty short. They should come out pretty easy when needed. But anyways, that's where I'm at. Do some more drilling. Started pre-assembly on it. Got all the pins made. Started messing with hydraulic hoses. Gotta figure out how I'm gonna split the lines that go to these two pistons. What I should do really is take the pistons apart so the seals are away from it, and I should cut these off and put the same thing on that I did here. But I don't know if I want to do that. It's a pain in the ass. So, I mean, in all reality, this one ought to be sticking straight up and down, and that one should be facing this way. But, I don't know. We'll see. I might make up some hard lines for it that bring it back to like here, because the hole for the hoses to come through is right there. I already drilled the back one. I gotta cut it out. I was gonna drill it up, but I want it back down here by the pivot point. Put some nice chafing gear on it, and that way it's not stretching the hoses, it's just bending them. But yeah, it's getting there. Got the front, I guess I'll call them shoes, and the I don't know, rotation plate. Anyways, it's just the stepped plate that the blade attaches to, and then there'll be a mount right here, and then a piston will come off of that mount up, and there'll be a mount right here sticking off of the blade with bracing, and that'll give you the rotation side to side. Anyways, quick update. Got the tops done. Started doing the hoses today. Surplus center, man, you gotta love it. I was super surprised too to see that right there from Surplus Center. For the price, I mean, it's ridiculous. You can get like a 20-foot hose from them for like nothing. It's like $15 or something like that with fittings crimped on it. I'm just, it amazes me. I've paid out the ass for hydraulic hoses before, especially where I live on an island. And I'm not dogging them because that's the way it is, but the place I get hoses from is one of the marine shops out here. It's Hopkins. Really nice guys. I love the place, but just it gets really pricey after a while buying hoses and fittings and stuff because they have their markup, and plus that's just the way it is, and it gets really pricey. But I did change the design a little bit on this. So originally I was going to have the splitters, those two splitters right up here, hard to this piston, and then split off to the other one. But to me, it looked like it was just going to get smashed. So I ended up changing it. So that meant that I had to take the hoses that I had made up already down to those guys, and I had them crimp on their Gates fittings on the ends to shorten them. These are the original ones, they're different. You can see those are the two different kinds. That's what Hopkins has, and this is from Surplus Center. These are really good fittings. I haven't seen anything wrong with their fittings. All of the chamfers are beautiful, and the machining is great on them, and the threads aren't all rippy and stuff. Like they're, those are, and they're from China, no doubt, but like that's really good quality, like the fittings. Fittings, it's funny because the fittings are from China, but the hose is from the U.S., but they're from the same company. It's what is it, Hydrolite, I think? Yeah, those guys. Hydrolite 2. And this is their anti-wear flame retardant type hose, so we'll see how it wears. This is probably going to get covers. I'm thinking like exhaust tubing, basically, with long sides on it that go over and kind of downhill to cover them up, and then I'll probably have something over it and probably the same type of cover on the other side, just to, you know, get a rock that tumbles over the top of the blade, or a stick gets jammed in the track and gets brought up through, and it's really easy to rip a hydraulic hose off and cause yourself a whole shitload of hassle. So I figure I'll put some covers on it here at some point. But yeah, you like my little drawing? When I put the hoses through, after I put this piece of 1/2-inch round bar on here, kind of just to spread the, you know, the amount where it can chafe on it, to spread it out a little bit and give it a nice radiused edge. And it also brought a bunch of strength back because I welded it inside and out. But when I did that and I ran the hoses through it, that was all I saw. It was really funny. It just looked like it was puking hydraulic hoses out. So I drew that on there and had a good laugh. Anyways, yeah, getting there. And then these two go to the piston that'll be right here for the rotation. So had to do a little funkiness, but it's a piece of stainless tube I welded up, bent to bring the fitting back around. Like I said, I think I said this in a previous video, but eventually this is going to come back off. When I need to rebuild these, which who knows when it'll be, because they do have some pitting on them, but when I rebuild them, I'll get all new seals for them. They should be just John Deere seals. I'm going to make new rods, probably out of polished stainless. We'll see, just so I don't have to worry about that ever again, because these do get hit with rocks and stuff. So, you know, if it's stainless, you just take a file to it and at least it won't rust. But yeah, when I do that, I'm going to cut these off, both of them, and get rid of the big gaumy ones and do basically the same thing I did on those, so that I can just put a 90 in it and put it on. Because the way they have them now, you have to do a straight fitting, a straight swivel, to be able to put a fitting or hose on it. It's kind of stupid. So yeah, I'll end up taking that off eventually. I did leave enough slack in that bottom hose so that when I'm ready, I can pull it up a little bit. But she's getting there. I think it looks great. Look even better when it's all painted and back on the machine and working. Oh, let's see. Next up, I got the hoses done. Well, they're pre-fit. Nothing's tight and nothing's got thread dope on it or anything. But next up is to take it off of those sawhorses, put it on some like 12x12 blocks, so it's just a little ways off the ground. Yank the blade in here, which is just outside the door, and put the blade on it to start building the mounts for that piston that's missing onto the blade and onto that frame right there. So it's going to be like right about here, kind of at an angle. You know, that'll give you your rotation. But I still think I'm going to have to take that apart and machine that. You can see it right now that it got a little whoop in it from putting those middle plates on. So I'm thinking it's probably going to have to go up on the mill and just get milled. I probably won't mill the whole thing just because it doesn't need it. I'll just mill here and here on the same plane so that it's square. But there's no point in taking all that time to make that a machine surface. It just doesn't need it. Out of sight, out of mind anyways. But yeah, it's once I get that mount done, it's pretty much ready for paint. I could paint this right now because this is all done. Besides some chafing gear, but I think I'm going to make that chafing gear bolt on. I'm thinking some 1/2-inch stainless strips right here, so that when the track hits it, it's hitting stainless. So anytime it scratches the paint off, which it is going to scratch the paint off, it won't rust. It'll just be a shiny spot. So I'll put some 1/2-inch stainless in there most likely. But like I said, I think I'm going to make it bolt on with like some countersunk bolts, so that when it's chafe through, you just peel it off and put a new one on. But yeah, I can't paint the front piece until I get that mount built on it for that. And once that's on, I will put it outside for probably a week in the water and the rain and let it get some surface rust on it and clean it up. And then, not clean it up, but you know, just kind of lightly clean it up with a wire brush, and then I'll hit it with the rust converter, because that stuff works really good. But anyways, good enough. Just finishing up the shortening of the cylinder. This is one that I had from an old project. It's basically a brand new cylinder. It's got 0 time on it. Just got mounted and cycled a couple times. So I shortened it up. Basically cut it right in half. It was a 12-inch throw. Now it's going to be a 5-inch throw. So just a little more than cutting it in half. But cut it off in the bandsaw. There's the piece. And then just, you know, chucked it up in the lathe and chamfered it, cleaned it up, smoothed it out with some sandpaper. Don't want any rough edges at all. In order to cut the seals. Then I had to take this apart, and I recut new threads after I cut it off, which are nice and smooth and very tight. But yeah, gives me, I cut this a little longer. Originally it was only 1.25 inches of threads. I cut it to 2 inches because there's about 3/4 to 1 inch of space in here before you get to the edge of the mount, and that gives me a lot more adjustment, so I can get the amount that it rotates centered like perfectly. But yeah, gonna slam it on there, and that lets me weld the mount on. For the second part of the mount, I welded the first part. You can just see it. Welded the first part of the mount on right there. Just tacked it. A couple, you know, good healthy tacks. And then I'll put this cylinder in place, and that will let me mount the second half of it that goes on this end. And usually the way I do that is this has a hard stop on one side. It would be putting the side that's closest to us down, has a hard stop on the banana shaped piece. So I'll put it right against that hard stop, and then I will collapse this cylinder up completely so that it's bottomed out. And then I'll weld that mount on, and that makes it so that as it cycles, it hits the stop, and the puck hits the back of the cylinder all at the same time. And then on the other side, there is no hard stop. I mean, I could put one in it, but it needs to be able to be removable so that you can, you know, spin the blade to take it off of the mounts. So, you know, having a hard stop on both sides doesn't really make sense. But yeah, 5 inches of travel gives me as much as I need for rotation. So I'll bring you back once I get some mounts welded on it. So I got the mounts all tacked in. Well, a little more than tacked, but not burned in yet. Got the piston cut. New tie rods made for the piston. I actually upgraded it, I guess you could say, because it was metric rod in there, and it was small for the hole, and a 1/2 inch rod fit perfect, like tight. So I got 1/2 inch rod and threaded the ends and put some nice lock nuts on it, and should be good to go. Yeah, the mounts are nice and tight, and everything seems to work. Yeah. That's max travel on the piston and on the frame piece, the slide. And then, so that's max travel that way. max travel the other way. Yeah, I'm very happy with that. That's more than whatever I would need. You know, I'll mainly be using this thing for driveways and stuff, so it plenty of angle. I'm really interested to see how this is all going to work. It's vaguely built off of a regular John Deere, you know, like a 450 type, but the mechanism's different for the rotation, and the piston placement's a little different, but you know, I took some pointers from it here and there. Turned out real good though. Super happy with how smooth it is and how tight everything came out. You know, there's not like no slop in this. Just a little bit in the pistons, but not. I got to put spacers in. The slop that way is supposed to be shimmed, but it's barely any, and it's my fault. I just didn't. I overbored them more than I should have, because I was anticipating them shrinking from welding and that type of metal, I guess. I don't know what it was, but it's a piece I had in the scrap pile, and it just didn't shrink like normal mild steel does. So I'm thinking it might have been a little bit of a harder material, like a 4140 or something. But anyways, so they're about 2 or 3 thou over on the bore, so it makes them clacky, but grease should take care of that. You know, it's gonna get wore out anyways. But come back down here in a little while after I have dinner, put the kids to bed, and do a bunch of burn-in. So open the door and run a bunch of rods. But I'm very happy with how this all turned out. Now it needs to be blown back apart and painted, and it can go on the machine. Yeah, pretty freaking cool. But I guess that's it on this video. This is an extremely long video. I don't know. I might break this up into 2 segments. We'll see. Anyways, it's been real.